had an interesting over-the-board game last night. So it was 2 in a row now, because I played on Monday night as well. This was away at King's Head in the Middlesex League, so playing for Muswell Hill. So I was black against Okike, and he kicked off with e4, and I played actually the French defence. I thought this would be quite solid. I know I've been playing Sicilian on ITC recently, but I still, like playing the French in longer games, as it's, sometimes quite solid. But in this game, we go into a variation which is actually quite dynamic and sacrificial, as we're about to see. So Nc3 Nf6, and he didn't, play Bishop G5 because I've kind of got my burn system, D takes E4 anyway. So he bypassed that, immediate E5 and F4 now. And okay, we're heading for this classic situation where I'm putting more and more pressure on D4. Now I'm using the move Queen B6 here. And now after Knight A4, I played a check, C3, C takes D4. And after B4, I think the sensible calm move is Queen C7, and the dynamic aggressive move is the sack of knight, which I've used many times in Blitz, and it does come from strong player games, but I'm not sure how statistically it's doing at the moment. Anyway, I was tempted eventually to consider playing knight takes b4. I played knight takes b4, a bit riskier, going down a piece. But there's 3 pawns for the knight here. C takes, bishop takes b4, check. And also this knight's a bit offside and has to reroute, sometimes like this. So here, bishop d2, bishop takes d2. So he can't take with the queen, because he'll be losing that knight, so he takes with the knight. And then the move b6, and okay, so this is quite interesting because I'm sort of trying to sort out this bad bishop issue and try and discourage white from castling, but also b6 might be useful for knight c5s. Now he plays a surprise move h4. I'm not sure that's that good objectively, but it does provide the continual threat of like the rook just coming out quite quickly against g7. So in that way it's kind of ingenious. Also, of course, it clamps down on g5 undermining moves, which might be attempting to blow up the centre. So yeah, it's quite an interesting move. I played bishop a6, and now the rook does come out menacingly. So g7 might be a problem in this game because of these continual threats of rook g3. Now, okay, I played in this position bishop takes f1, but maybe castling is playable as well. If castling, my main concern was bishop d3, but maybe this isn't so bad. There's an interesting idea here available actually, that the rook might not be best placed on d3. If I take, checking with engine, actually, I can chase this knight now to b2, and if it can't immediately come to d3, then knight c5. And now if rook takes d4, queen c3 will be attacking both of those guys. And if the rook moves, well, this position I think is interesting. It's starting to be quite interesting. So if that's ruled out, then that means castling might be good. Let's get some technical analysis here then. I believe in this position casting is given as actually one of the strongest moves. So bishop takes f1 gives white a small advantage actually. You can see a significant evaluation change. So if I just castled, but let's say knight b2 f6, I can get this quick f6ing, but the king being left on e1 is quite important. Actually, that's quite an important theme of the whole game, trying to leave the king as exposed as possible and not like chasing it into safety. If the king's like left on e1 in this variation, that's actually quite handy. But let's examine like this situation. And here a move like rook f4 might be really good, with the king sort of stranded on e1. So that is significantly different from what I play, you know, bishop takes f1. So if you want goal hanging pieces around the opponent's king, which is always quite handy because then there's continual perpetual threats, it's good to leave the goal there rather than chasing the goal somewhere else into safety, where the goal being the king. So you know, he's forfeited castling with this rook h3 move. So I should really try and let the king very, very slowly crawl, or not crawl at all. If I can break out with f6 and stop the king, you know, getting to safety, that's even better. But as I say, my principal concern here about castling, so the sort of first miscalculation actually, was actually sort of bishop d3 during the game. But actually this is okay. As I say, bishop takes. Now b5 or even f6 is good here. If I'm forcing something like g3, e5, again the rook's a tactical target, and the king, you know, stuck in the center is a concern. Like this, if he has to play a move like king d1, okay, so king f1. Anyways, it's a bit messy, but you get the idea that maybe this isn't the best idea to play bishop takes f1. I'm moving the goalposts here, so king takes f1. The king, if he can get into safety and the rook can do this, it's getting all the perks of attacking my king potentially if I'm going to castle, without the white king being in trouble here. So I castle knight b2, and the knight's coming nicely to d3 as well. Nice maneuver, logical. f6, and I'm about to be in my first bit of calculation disaster now. After knight f3, I am very ambitiously take on e5, and you know, even though the knight's going to come to d3, I make it come with tempo now. I play rook f4. This probably isn't the best idea in the world. In this position, I'm wondering knight c5 or something. Just knight c5 might be the best move. Or even knight takes e5. So queen takes d4, knight c6, that's fine. I'm not even sure I gave much consideration to knight takes e5. I wonder about knight c5, does that blow the advantage? Probably king g1, yeah. So, okay, so knight takes e5 might be good to try and exploit that pin now. So what I played is actually leading into trouble, rook f4. So he kicks the rook, and I really do get into trouble now by moving the rook to e4. So best here, I mean, because this is another tempo gain square with knight g5, which has its own menacing like threats. So here, I don't know actually. Maybe why didn't I look at rook g4? So rook e4, knight g5, and this is starting. You see, this is starting to go up because really I'm forced to sack the exchange here. This is what happens anyway. So knight g5, but what I play is actually a disastrous blunder here on move 21. Actually, the game could have been completely finished here, end of game, because I take on e5, basically going down a rook. That's the idea, to try and go down a rook for these central pawns, 4 pawns for the rook. You know, expecting knight takes e4, but actually there's a really crushing simple move, just queen h5. So it'll be threatening queen h7, and other horrible stuff. And you know, if h6, just to demonstrate, knight takes e4 is just also lateral pressure on the knight, so that's just winning that knight. Whole, you know, massive material advantage. So so that was a first mini little disaster. Fortunately, the game continued though, because after knight takes e5, he didn't play queen h5. So first major blunder from my opponent. He just took on e4. And now we have a sort of unbalanced position, wild position, after queen takes e5 here. So I've got 4 pawns for the rook, so it's a fun game anyway. 4 pawns to the rook, with these pawns kind of potentially crashing down in many variations, and potentially the queen and rook being lethal, and maybe, you know, rook f2s, visualizing all of this, or maybe even d3 and, you know, queen pressure. So it looked quite kind of exciting. He first plays king g1. So I play rook f8 and now queen e1, and I was pleased to be able to play e3 because now I've got the idea of queen e4 and try and get these pawns going down the board. Queen g3, queen e4, and I sort of liked my chances in this position. And you might think, well, aren't I just a rook down? Well, it's the dynamic potential of these pawns. Can I actually do anything with the extra rook? And if we turn on an engine here, it's, you know, it's a very complicated imbalance, this rook versus 4 pawns. Black probably with best play might be better here. Look, minus or about equal, or even white better now. So maybe it's subjectively unsound actually, h5, and it's actually objectively unsound. Okay, I was naughty. I went a bit crazy in this game, definitely. Too naughty. Okay, but his move rook f1 might be the best then. Rook f1, because the king's drawn back a little bit towards the centre after rook takes, king takes, and this is important that the king's here now. If it can't crawl back in safety that easily, then the availability of continual checks and threats, like on f2, if say my queen was there, that would be continually threatening, you know, f2. Or if the king was here, even more dangerous sometimes. But the last thing I want is the king going into safety, really. I need, as I say, I think one of the lessons of this game is if you want goal-hanging resources like goal-hanging queen, you've got to leave the goal around, not chase the goal into safety. I think that was one of the big problems coming up here, that I blundered here really quite badly. Now, to be honest, here I did sink into thought for about 20 minutes, and actually I kind of used that docking computer concept recently that I've been talking about to try and look at all the forcing moves. The thing is, the problem is it's quite tricky, this position, and the forcing moves I was considering, the main ones that worried me was like queen b8 check and rook f3. If I didn't play h6. Now the queen on e4 has some advantages here, that my king safety is improved actually with the queen on e4 in many variations, and for some reason I thought, you know, maybe I'll take the risk of the queen trying to herd these 2 pawns down. And so it's a major kind of miscalculation here, that I thought I'd get away with h6 and the king just being tucked over to h7, just trying to herd these pawns. That was the basic idea. So, and I didn't really consider that I was chasing this goal away. Actually, it's very important to try and maximize the opponent's king being as unsafe as possible. So if you chase the king here to h2, it's safer. That's a principle, but also another principle is the queen is kind of helping my king safety here. That's another kind of principle which can help navigate the kind of sea of variations here. And there's also things like queen b1 check to consider, which would also drive like the queen back unless the king wants to come to e2. So there's a lot of tempting alternatives here: queen d3 or queen b1, and you've got to factor in queen b8 and rook f3s. But I was tempted by queen d3 check. As I say, unfortunately, one of the principles here being changed in the position is the king's been driven into safety. So he plays king g1, and I might be in real trouble now, actually, already. I want to herd my pawns, so check. I've driven the king into safety, and I honestly didn't really see in this position how my king was in such severe trouble. I thought maybe at worst perpetual check if he plays check and then queen back to e5 to try and get some sort of perpetual check. So I casually played like h6, thinking this isn't a problem. The thing is, I haven't got time for e2 and e1. In fact, he's in this position. He's got multiple winning methods. So it was actually a bad miscalculation. This I think he can either win with queen b8 or what he played, which might be even stronger. So as an example, if queen b8, queen g6 is given the strongest, but check is also probably winning here because of rook g3. You see, this pawn needs 2 moves to queen. So say I played this, I would just be instantly losing. Queen c7. The queen is in no position now to defend the king. So I'd just be staving off. Yeah, it's gone. But even stronger is just simply what he played, which was queen g6. Again, I just need. It's far too slow. What happened here? e2. He just takes on e6, and now he just plays rook g3. It doesn't matter about me queening here. I'm just going to get mated because of queen g6 and queen g7. I can't queen. I'll just show you that just to make sure. Check, and then it'll be mate. So it's just too slow to queen here with this idea. Basically, it was terrible because I kind of was looking at this position for quite a while, about 20 minutes. I was letting my clock dwindle down after this rook f1 takes. But there's a few principles here of if we're going to try and navigate such a difficult position. Okay, you can try and look at the forcing moves, but I think there's certain principles of navigation here, of king safety, and like keeping the opponent's king as unsafe as possible, keeping your king as safe as possible. So you want that king as unsafe as possible, this as safe as possible. How do you do that here? Well, queen b1 is a good try from that point of view, of that principle. I think, you know, if king e2, for example, let's see, I think black would be winning now, or better. Black would be better. I could pick up this pawn, or about equal technically. So if the king dared to come out, it'd be like the game the other night. King can crawl out amazingly to e4, and then now maybe, you know, this rook g3 business is now too slow because e2 is going to be with check. So that's a major difference. The speed of the imbalances, actually, the pawns coming down versus my king safety. It's all the speed of the imbalances. How they reveal themselves. Do I have time to queen my pawns? So queen b1 check. Okay, so say queen e1, which is a sort of more human move. It's bringing the queen away from my king. So that's a principle of the position to bear in mind. So say queen c2 as the engine suggested. The thing is here, I've got this kind of threat on f2 now, so the queen's kind of tied down. And if the rook moves there, it's taking away the queen's g3 square. So how does the queen come out here? Because remember, with the king here, I can play h6, and this is no longer working because there'll be mate on f2. You know, that sort of stuff. You know, the king's basically much better on f1 for me to leave it on f1. So you know, queen b1's a good move, but there's an even stronger move, just leaving the queen actually apparently on e4. So what happens now? How does this rook g3 variation work, you might ask? So say rook g3. You see, with the king on f1, I've got check, and apparently, you know, just check that the white king safety is really coming to the fore here, because after check, I've got time now for e2. I'm just menacing threat of e1. So this will be winning for me. So it's all this speed of my pawns versus the speed of his attack here, and I just had a hard time not being tempted by queen d3 check here. Believe it or not. I mean, clearly, when the opponent played h4 early on, the idea is the rook g3 move, so g7 being in trouble. And given that crudity, it's important to keep the opponent's king unsafe, just in case, you know, worst case scenario, that I need an extra check or extra speed of my pawns. But I just drove the opponent's king into safety here. Terrible blunder, really. Of course, the game wasn't that sort of accurate from earlier. So this is the problem. I just drove the king into safety, and I just completely underestimated the speed of white's coordination on g7, because all he needs to do is just threaten after rook g3. Although there's no concrete threat on g7, the threat here is queen g6. So that's end of game. This queen's helpless for my king. It's unfortunate. That's the game of the chess. You know, you win some, you lose some, and some positions are just very hard to navigate. We're not computers. If we were, then the game would be boring anyway. Most of the games would be ending in draws, and we wouldn't play. So, catch-22. If you want a game which is fun, you've got to accept. You know, you win some and you lose some. Otherwise, as I say, it's not worth playing chess if it was that easy. So someone's asked me today on YouTube, you know, how do I accept the three results, win, draw, loss? As I say, well, I suppose you could look at it like, you know, as I say, if you never lost, if no one ever lost, it would all be draws, and it would be like playing noughts and crosses. But we get ourselves into very complicated positions sometimes, very difficult to navigate. And of course, it's easy in retrospect to say, oh, these are the principles of the position here. You know, the speed of the pawns versus the king safety of both kings, and then create some generalization, and then you'll lose in some other way in the next game. But that's the fun of chess. It was just for me, it was incredibly hard to calculate this position. I just thought, you know, that was promising with the queen, with the pawn on e2. I really didn't see the rook and queen coordinating that quickly, to be honest here. But let's go back to the earlier incident, which was almost fatal as well. So let's have a look at this game again. So I thought it was an interesting, dynamic game anyway, and I kind of enjoyed during the game, you know, the exciting imbalance. Just hope I'm not annoying other members of the team going rook down, but objectively, you know, it was a reasonably good chances for me anyway, because the centre pawns being quite kind of dangerous. But the interesting blunder here that I just want to check out, rook f4 instead of knight e5. So knight e5 is a simple way of playing this position then. I'm surprised actually because that also emphasises the 2 pawns in the centre. So let's have a quick look at knight e5 again, from a strategic point of view. If I just lose d4, which is a double pawn anyway, get this knight. So I want to get these pawns going. So e5 here, e4. So we've got a situation: do the pawns get blockaded, or are they useful, or is my king in trouble again on g7? Rook ac8, say rook g3. So g7 under fire. This is just very tricky, this balance of the centre pawns again versus the king safety, you know, which is faster. So say queen b4, that provides queen e7, I guess. If queen g5, oh, there's queen d4 check anyway. Sorry. So knight c6 first. The queen d4 check's very handy here, actually, just for protecting g7 anyway. So this is an interesting position where the pawns might be mobile, but it's again tricky. You know, if resources start coming to my king, then my king's going to be in trouble again. So this is always a problem in the position fundamentally from this early knight sack. Then I'm giving the opponent more material. Can they actually mate me before I make use of my extra pawns? So that's like the big balance of the whole game, really. This from the knight takes b4. So here I was attracted by rook f4. So knight takes c5 is objectively one of the stronger moves, the strongest move according to Houdini 2.0. So I started to get in big trouble here after knight g5. So the best here is apparently h6, and that's pretty terrible at 1.45 technically. So he doesn't have to move this knight here apparently. Again, this is the time factor of my king being loose. Queen stuck over here. It doesn't really seem that promising for saving my king here. So queen g4, I guess I get mated here if takes check, or queen takes d7, and now, well, here's a rook up and he's got menacing threats. So say takes, he's just a rook up and my pawns are going, so that's no good. So yeah, this looked pretty bleak actually here. So the crushing move is queen h5, and this would have been all over if h6. And if I did, I don't know what else to do here. I think I get mated on knight takes d3, check. Rook takes d3, and I'm going to get mated soon. Rook c1 on queen h8 check. Yeah, losing this pawn doesn't seem that pleasant. So he's just, you know, a whole knight up here. It's crushing, absolutely crushing. So he missed that queen h5. So we have this exciting position now, where, as I say, so it's the time factor. I'm a rook down. Can I get these pawns going? So the answer of this game was no, basically. And so then the question's asked, could it have been improved? Yes. King could have been left on f1. Easy to say in retrospect. If you want to be having chances against the opponent's king, leave it exposed. Don't chase it into safety. Easy principle there. For your own games. So maybe you can avoid a similar kind of disaster if you have a sort of position like this where you've got a crazy imbalance but your king safety is at stake. It comes down to speed and not and for your assets, if you're going to realise them, not to be too slow that you get mated. So I was far too slow here and I was getting mated basically. So anyway, yeah. This just shows that I was slightly optimistic here about my king safety, and the illusions were shattered here. So in this position, actually, I played queen b1 to fend off queen g6, but he just plays here queen e7, and that's nothing I can do really apart from lose my queen. So I resign here. So I hope there's some points there. sometimes it's really incredibly hard to navigate positions. So what are you left with? You're left with looking for intuitive factors like king safety and trying to work on those. Make sure the opponent's king is as exposed as possible, not driven into safety. Make sure you've got lots of checks available in worst case scenarios, that sort of thing, because it's sometimes just really difficult to calculate positions. So try and look at sources of counterplay to make sure those perhaps are in the position. And I've removed my sources of counterplay because the king over here, I've got no salvaging checks or anything. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks so much.